Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of Loki Lamentis. And I thought that this episode was okay. Now granted, I don't need action every minute and things happening every minute. I don't mind slower episodes like this one kind of introduces to us. But it's the shortest one that we've gotten so far, and we didn't really get a lot of things happening. We got some insights to our endgame Loki that we've been following, and Sylvie, as she's now being called, the Lady Loki that we saw doing her stuff in the last episode. But other than that, we are just presented in a problem and even an environment in this episode that really isn't explored in depth. It's like they could have literally been in any other apocalypse doing any other kind of thing that was going on. So this episode actually starts off, and we see that Sylvie is eating with the hunter that she had captured to gather information about the timekeepers. And we kind of are shown in this way of how her enchantment works, as she's pretty much trying to dig information that pretty much that the elevator that leads to the timekeepers is the gold elevator in the TVA. That's pretty much the extent that we get from it. Now, it also does lead to some other information that we get later on in the episode, but that's about the gist of it. Is they're like eating, and she's like trying to dig out more information from this hunter chick about where the timekeepers are. And the way she was freaking out in the previous episode, you'd essentially be able to say that she pinpointed exactly where the timekeepers are. This is only just showing that these gold elevators lead to them. It's not even like you could have like 54 other fucking elevators you gotta deal with to even get to them at a certain point. Well, she got the information. It then links up to, as we saw her dealing with her shit in the Roxcart place. Then we pop off and we see where that doorway she had fled to when she fled in the previous episode. So she's in. She gets her kind of fight scenes with the TVA agents, and they're decent. I like these fight scenes a little bit better because there's less cutting in and out and editing together. You don't have to always do a continuous one shot for an action scene, but you have to watch out for jump cuts and edits because it breaks up the flow of what's going on. And the thing is, we have her fighting these TVA agents. Some she kills, well, some she used the baton on to pretty much delete from existence, kills. We still deletes pretty much, and some she doesn't. She just, and it's not really, there's no really rhyme or reason, and I don't mind that per se, if that's an accurate representation of what we're getting for. Otherwise, it's almost like they're like, oh, it'll be cool if she kills some, and if she doesn't kill some, it's like, oh, that'll leave her ambiguous. I'm like, okay, that could, but usually, if you're trying to go after someone, especially the timekeepers, you'd probably want as little interference within that mission as possible. So most likely you would kill anybody, so that way they can't get like send any more reinforcements after you, because she just knocks out some of them. So it's like, okay, maybe there's more to her plan that we need to know. That's just one of the things that you kind of need a little bit more in for action scenes. I mean, yeah, you could have it look cool, like, oh, look, she's deleting that dude. Oh, yeah, that's going on for here. But you kind of have to put thought into why these people will do these things. I know I bring up John Wick a lot, but John Wick does what he does to tactically take down his opponents. And even though it's like a deadly ballet, you see that there's reasons and how he takes out certain people to make sure that he doesn't have to deal with a certain problem later on, potentially. And you see that that helps to actively show how his character handles these kind of situations. That's how you want to approach an action scene, to truly show what is going on within a character's mind and within a character's frame of reference. Sure, you could have them to have cool kind of things going on, but they also communicate what a character's going through. So it's like, alright, cool. So she's pretty much making her way to the elevator. Our Loki pops in, is able to get his daggers, and wants to kind of know what her plan is. And she's like, no. And granted, there's a little bit more than that. They're having their back and forth, trying to pretty much out Loki each other, because that's the biggest kind of issue here, is that Loki's whole shtick is being the god of mischief, and that brings upon it a kind of acceptable range of like untrustworthiness. So them trying to like figure out what's going on with each other isn't out of the realm of possibility, especially since she's been evidently planning this for years, and they're kind of like going at each other a little bit. But then of course Renslayer, the person that is linked up with Mobius, comes in for like, yeah, all right, let's kind of stop these guys. And then for some reason Sylvie is holding the endgame Loki hostage. She's like, I'll kill him, and she's like, and I'm quite okay with this. I'd probably kill him anyway. So our endgame Loki is able to use her temp pad and gets them out of that situation. However, it throws them to Lamentis 1 in 2077 as a planet is pretty much crashing into this moon that they're on, which is Lamentis 1, and that's the apocalypse scenario, and that the temp pad is out of juice, and so they have to figure out a way to juice it up. They're pretty much squabbling at each other. She's pretty much like, I've been trying to plan this thing out for years. And Loki's like, alright, let's just try and figure out what's going on. He's got the temp pad. He's able to use his magic to kind of like finagle it and pretty much put it in a position where she can't fucking get at it. She tries to enchant his ass, but of course he's like, I've got stronger mind than this. It's like, okay. Pretty much Jedi mind trick kind of thing. Now granted, I use it as a base of reference because that's the earlier thing. Though the way she enchants, she does kind of go in a little bit more detail, but it's like, if you got a strong mind, it's harder to enchant someone. So, yeah, it's the basic kind of like mind control kind of shit that we've seen beyond Star Wars, but also during Star Wars with how a mind trick works. So, they are reluctantly working together to try and get out of this situation before they all die. So, they just pretty much putter around. Loki's like, hey, how about we use that to power it up? Oh, it's a fucking neon sign. It's not gonna fucking work shit. They find this pretty much lady out in the wilderness, and it pretty much shows their tactics to what's going on. Sylvie, of course, pretty much puts down her name to be Sylvie, and that she doesn't want to be called Loki. So that could be like due to some kind of various reasons, because in the comic books, Sylvie, as the Enchantress, was gifted her powers by Loki, so she might not technically be a Loki, but fulfill the role of a Loki in that timeline. I know that gets kind of confusing, but it works out kind of into the same kind of difference. She could be also Loki as well because of what goes on throughout the other parts of the show as we get other information, so we'll have to see. So, of course, she kind of tries to bust in and be like, give us whatever you got, and she gets blasted. Loki tries diplomacy and deception, turning into what he believes the woman's husband is, and gets blasted as well. As like, never said anything nice like that in 30 years. And then they are able to somehow get information from her that you want to get off this planet, there's an arc, go to the train place. So they go there, and we just see the same old kind of stuff. There's like the rich are going to try and escape first, other people lamenting that going on as well, and we don't really get a sense of this place and this people at all. Now granted, our main focus should be the anchor characters of Loki and Sylvie, and I understand that, but you can also flesh this stuff out a little bit as well, because they're just like, oh god, they're going to leave us here to die, and that's pretty much the entire shtick of this moon. Like, we don't get an idea of why these people are on this moon, why this planet is crashing in this moon. It's just a kind of plot obstacle for our characters to kind of get around. And the thing is, I understand you need plot obstacles, but you need it to be more than just like, hey, here's this plot obstacle. It's like, alright. So, she wants to pretty much like try and enchant a guard to get on there. Loki, of course, does his deception thing as a dude, and they kind of like halvesy their kind of plan. She, of course, laments that his thing wasn't really a plan, it was just a go by the seat of your pants kind of shtick. But they're able to get onto the train, and they sit in this kind of like refreshment cart as they're pretty much swapping stories. Loki getting into his family details about how he didn't know he was adopted until later. Sylvie, knew she was adopted, and that she doesn't really delve much into it other than she knew she was adopted pretty early on, and that she makes snide remarks that she's got like a long distance relationship with like a postman kind of thing going on. Loki learned magic from his mother. Of course, shows off some of the little tricks that he can go for like guys or girls. Doesn't really matter. But he still doesn't have anyone important to him that he's got relationship wise. And that's a pretty like they didn't hit you over the head with like, oh, he goes for guys and girls. You know what I mean? It organically came up, and it makes sense because most gods in mythology fuck anything and everything, as anything and everything. And at least they didn't go like fucking Zeus route and just fucking like horny everything. I mean, granted, in certain mythologies, Loki, I think it was like Loki had sex with a horse and had Hela. I know, that gets kind of like nutty as shit. You really get into it and you're like, alright, that's pretty much like the tamest thing, but okay, cool. But it makes sense that Loki doing his mischieving thing really wouldn't have like someone that he's connected with. But that's like an important bit to kind of get with his character. It's like, alright, he's kind of stuck doing his thing, and he is usually stuck on himself, so it makes sense that he wouldn't be completely entangled with someone. But of course, they're still kind of like fucking around with each other, and are just like, fine, need to like rest. And then for some odd-ass reason, Sylvie's resting, and then Loki is pretty much getting drunk and singing Asgardian songs, and is no longer in the outfit that presents him as a guard. And it doesn't make sense why Loki would do this whatsoever. We've never seen Endgame Loki do anything like this. Now, granted, it's kind of brought up as like, hey, it's the end of the world, everybody's going to be partying and shit. Where then somebody kind of walks by, and then we see them have their guard fight scene, which I don't mind fight scenes, but again, it's the whole kind of how it's set up that I'm like, I wish they kind of done it a little better. It's like, alright, cool, whatever. And then Loki kind of gets like thrown out of the train, and then of course Sylvie's got to follow after him, and they're walking by, and then they're just gonna like walk to where the Ark is. It's like, alrighty then. It's just like, okay, we're getting information, we're getting some character development, but it's like really minuscule. It's like, alright, this is like the first episode. Now granted, there's only been 3 so far, but I'm like, alright, is something happening? No, okay. And we're just like learning a little bit more about like how she does stuff with her enchantment, because Loki doesn't. He's wondering if she like projects an illusion in people's minds to get him to do stuff. Which magicians talking shop like this is an important aspect, and I like kind of getting. It doesn't have to be completely nuts and bolts, depending upon the magic system, if it's hard or soft. But I do like them kind of getting into how these kind of things work. She's like, no, kind of, I grab their mind and kind of jiggle around with it. And then we get the information, at least from her, that she had issue doing it with the hunter person that we saw in the beginning, because her mind was kind of clouded and everything, and that she had to go back like a couple hundred years, which is kind of weird because it looks kind of like modern for us, but of course time passes differently in the TVA, and we don't know exactly when present time is. And of course, once you're talking about time travel, it's all relative anyway. I could be like 3,000 years old relative to where I was born, because I'm like 60,000 light years away because of all the time that's passed. Granted, I would still be my biological age, but my chronological age compared to where I was and what I was doing is different. So that's an interesting kind of like conundrum of getting into time as a kind of thing like that. But she then drops the other bombshell that pretty much the TVA is made up of variants. That's a big kind of thing because it contradicts what we had heard from Mobius, that everybody was pretty much created by the Timekeepers in the TVA. Now, it would make sense that like if there's a multiversal war that, I don't know, some people would pretty much try and become the Timekeepers and create themselves into pretty much a high-level order and wrangle up any kind of variant, and then of course muck with their minds and make them into people that work with the TVA. So it's like, that's That's interesting. They're brainwashing these people, so technically they were born there. It's just they have all different kinds of memories and stuff, because that would make sense why Mobius is so fixated on jet skis and shit. It's like, right. But it then puts into the question of, are the timekeepers those 3 space lizard people things? Or could it be like another Loki doing his Loki thing and creating an army of variants in order to protect himself from other Loki variants that would try and take him over, because it is... Loki would like to try and be on top, and if Loki is on top, he'd be worried that other Lokis that would be trying to be on top would try and come after him. I mean, that's one possible way they could go. It could be just the crazy and insane shenanigans shit of just, like, they've figured out that the multiversal war is something that is not an ideal scenario, and instead of pretty much deleting people, they just keep reworking them into the TVA to do a better service rather than just killing people. Granted, the way they are doing it is a fascistic, crazy-ass, motherfucking brainwashing thing, which is not good, alright? And more be like, hey, could you help us out to make sure that we don't have, like, a multiversal war? Okay, cool. If not, you're going to be doing some weird shit, and then it's going to be doing the multiversal war, so please not do that. No, they can't be nice and ass. They have to make a giant weird city that may or may not be in the quantum realm. I've seen that theory floating around because of, like, again, relativity that we'd seen in Endgame. Scott Lang had been, like, in the quantum realm for what him was 5 hours, but out here was like 5 years. We'll have to see how that kind of shakes out. So, we've got this big kind of bombshell of information. It's like, alright, cool. Let's kind of see how that works. And then we just kind of get them going further, and they get to the place where the Ark is, and they're trying to get to the Ark as bits and bobs are flying around, and it's just pretty much disaster movie porn, sprinkled with some fight scenes that pop up, and then the episode ends when one of the things destroys the Ark, and they are stuck there. So, how are they going to get out, and how they're going to, like, charge up the temp pad? We don't know! Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z. But... that's pretty much it. I was disappointed in this episode, not because of the reveals, but just the journey to get to those reveals. It's just like, wow, this is like the bare amount of shit that you could have done. I'm like, you could have put them into any kind of apocalypse scenario, and the reason you put them in an apocalypse scenario is to see how they would deal with it. This, they just don't really deal with it. It's just very cut and dry, like point A, point B. Oh shit, we can't get to point C, so we have to go to point D through this weird twisting way. It's just like the journey to kind of get there and to get to this information is like, it could have been done better. It's not the worst I've seen. I've seen far fucking worse. Trust me on that. But I hope that this is just, out of 6 episodes, you are going to get ones that aren't going to be that good. Now, granted, in any kind of, like, show run, you're going to get episodes that potentially are just not going to work out. And this one doesn't work out as well as I would like, but is not like a steaming pile of horse shit that I would say is like the hallmark of, don't fucking do this. I have other things for that. So, we got some cool information. I wish we'd just gotten a little bit better, and just waiting to see what kind of happens next, to see how they get out of this, and how Loki and Sylvie do their thing for what's going on, because if she's been working on this for years, and she got the information that these TVA agents are variants, what are they going to do to this organization? Because honestly, even though I've only been watching this for 3 episodes, I'd almost be like, I understand keeping order and not hurting people and trying to protect existence so that way it doesn't start reversing itself and eating itself like a motherfucker. But I would have been like going against this organization as well because of all the bad shit that they do for this. It's like, no. So I'm interested to see how that moral kind of conundrum kind of evolves and where it kind of leads to. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.